This is the Algebra 1 Unit 5 test review, inequalities. Tina can type at least 40 words per minute, and we're going to write and graph an inequality to describe that statement. Well, at least means greater than or equal to. So we could say that, and you can use whatever variable you want. So x is greater than or equal to 40. Then we are going to mark 40 on our number line. It's going to be closed because it's greater than or equal to. And then we are going to graph to the right because it's greater than. Remember, your arrow will go in the same direction as your inequality symbol if your variable is on the left. Number 2, we're going to write an inequality for that graph. So I know I'm just going to use x as my variable. I know my point that it starts at is at -2. My inequality is going to go the same direction as my graph. So x is greater than -2. It's an open circle, so we do not need the or equal to part. Solve this inequality, so we have to subtract 4 from both sides. Y is less than -9. I need to put -9 on my number line. It's going to be an open circle going to the left because it's less than 9. Also remember, some of your teachers may want you to put more than one number on your graph, so make sure you do what your teacher prefers. On number 4, we need to divide by -0.7. So we have x, since we divided by a negative on both sides, we need to flip our inequality, and then that's going to be x is greater than 4. So I'm going to put 4 on my number line. It's going to be an open circle to the right. 5 says the maximum weight allowed per car on the Wildcat Carnival ride is 220 pounds. Your friend weighs 90 pounds. To be able to ride in a car together, how much can you weigh? Write and solve the inequality. So if the maximum weight is 220, so our inequality is going to have to say that it is less than or equal to 220 pounds. And if your friend weighs 90 and you want to add yourself, so I'm just going to call you x, then we can solve that inequality. So if we minus 90 from both sides, so x needs to be less than or equal to 130 pounds. If we solve number 6, one thing that might be helpful is if you would take this negative and write it in the denominator. So I'm going to rewrite this as x over -2 is less than -5. This way it's not, oh, is it with the numerator or is it with the denominator? Now whenever I multiply both sides by -2, so I would have x, I have to flip my inequality, and then 10, so x is greater than 10. Open circle to the right. Members of the Computer Science Club are sponsoring a bake sale. The students must pay the school $75 for the use of the cafeteria and spend 15 cents on bagging each item. How many pastries must they sell at $3.55 in order to make a profit? So the easiest way to do this is to think about it as our profit needs to be greater than our total cost. Okay, so we want our profit to be more than our cost. So our profit is going to be $3.55 for each item. Needs to be greater than our other cost that we actually spent to do it was $75, just a one-time fee, then 15 cents on bagging each item. So that's 15 cents times every item. So then if we subtract 0.15x, so minus 0.15x, we would have 3.40x has to be greater than 75. So when we divide this, divide by 3.4, we get that x has to be greater than 22.5 2.06. Now, technically, this does not answer our question because it says how many pastries. So if you think about it, if you sold 22 pastries, you wouldn't actually make a profit. You would need to sell 23 pastries to actually make a profit. So you had to look at the number larger than this since it says greater than 22.06. On the next two, we are just solving. So if we subtract 5, negative 5x is greater than 20. We divide by negative 5. Because we are dividing by a negative, we have to flip our inequalities. X is less than negative 4. I like to keep my coefficients positive if possible, so I'm going to choose to minus 13b. If you don't want to do it that way, that's fine. We'll get the same answer either way. So that's negative 6 is less than or equal to 1b plus 8. So if I subtract 8, negative 14 is less than or equal to b. Now we would need to rewrite our answer with the b on the left-hand side. So b, then I write my negative 14. Then I look to see that my inequality is pointing towards that negative 14. So when I rewrite it, it also has to be pointing towards the negative 14. So b is greater than or equal to negative 14. So we want to know if 19 is considered a solution to that inequality. And there's two different ways we can do this. You can either solve or you can just plug it in. I think we'll plug in just for an example. So we have negative, now I've got to plug in the x, so notice that double negative there, plus 5 divided by 4 is less than or equal to 6. So whenever we solve, that double negative is just a plus, so we've got 19 plus 5, so we have 24 over 4 is less than or equal to 6. Finally, 6 is less than or equal to 6. Because of this or equal to part, this is a true statement, so the answer would be yes, 19 is a solution to that inequality. We have to solve 11 and 12. I've got to start by distributing on 11. I'm going to minus 2x from both sides. Subtract 5. So 2x is greater than or equal to negative 1, divide by 2. So x is going to be greater than or equal to negative 1/2. So I'm going to come over here and graph that. So I have negative 1/2, and it is going to be a closed circle to the right. For 12, I also have to start out by distributing. So 5x plus 2 is less than 3x minus 9. Minus 2 from both sides. 2x is less than negative 11. If we divide by 2 on both sides, we end up with x is less than negative 11 over 2. You can also write that as negative 5.5, but I prefer to leave it as a fraction. So negative 11 over 2, then it's an open circle to the left because it is less than. Which is the graph of the solution set. So we just have to solve it and then match up the graph. So the first thing I notice is on this one, please be careful because this is just a minus or a negative that is supposed to be distributed. Nothing's going to happen with that 5 yet. So we would have 5 minus 2x minus 3 is less than or equal to, and I'm going to have to distribute on this side, negative 6x plus 2x minus 2. So then we have negative 2x plus 2 is less than or equal to, got to combine like terms, negative 4x minus 2. I'm going to plus 4x Remember, you may choose a different step, but we should end up with the same answer. So we have 2x plus 2 is less than or equal to negative 2. Subtract 2. 2x is less than or equal to negative 4. Divide by 2. So x is less than or equal to negative 2. Then we need to pick out our graph. One thing that I could have done from the beginning, because it has or equal to, I could have immediately crossed out A and B because they have open circles. So less than or equal to negative 2 would be graph D. For 14, I'm just going to solve. It's got fractions, but that's okay. So in this case, I think I'm going to choose to plus 3/4 D. So we have negative 5 is less than, if you do 1/4 plus 3/4, that's just 1D plus 7. Then if we minus 7 from both sides, we end up with negative 12 is less than D. And then if we rewrite our answer, it's pointing towards the negative 12, so I need to make sure it points to the negative 12 in my answer. Okay, for 15, Desmond wants to take guitar lessons. The one-time registration fee is $60, and each lesson costs $40. Which of the following inequalities can Desmond use to determine X, the number of lessons he can take, if he wants to spend no more than C dollars? And there's a great hint. The amount that Desmond wants to pay should be less than or equal to the amount he wants to spend. Okay, so you'll notice that I wrote kind of what it says on the hint. So the amount that he actually spends, so the $60 plus the $40 per lesson, needs to be less than the total cost that he actually wants to pay. So if we look at this, one thing that would be great to eliminate answer choices is that the 60 is a one-time fee. So the 60 should not have an X with it, so we could cross out F and H. Then if you look down here, 60 plus 40 times each lesson needs to be less than or equal to the total cost that he wants to spend. So the answer would be G. So 16 says the cost of a 5-pound bag of dog food ranges from $4.65 to $5.35. Write and graph an inequality to describe this. Well, if we are going on a number line, and I drew my own, you can use that one. So we're going from $4.65 up to $5.35. So since it's ranges from those prices, we can include those prices. So it can be anywhere from $4.65 all the way up to $5.35. So that's what our graph would look like. If we need to write a compound inequality, first and foremost, you should recognize that this is an and because it is shaded in the middle. So we would say that X is greater than or equal to negative 4, and X is less than 1, 2, 3. Remember, whenever you have an and inequality, you can always write it compoundly without the word and. So I like to put my X in the middle, then I put my numbers in numerical order, so negative 4 on the left, 3 on the right. Then I make sure my inequalities are pointing in the correct direction. So with the 3, it was pointing towards the X, so I have to make sure the same thing here. With the X and the negative 4, it was pointing towards the negative 4. So that is two different ways that are both correct to write your inequality. Number 18, I'm not going to write all of it out, but I will kind of work through it. You first have two options as far as how you even start this problem. You can split it up, so you would go from the beginning all the way to the end, or right before the second inequality, so it would be negative 20 is less than or equal to 5x minus 5. And then you would go from 5x minus 5 is less than 35. Notice that that middle section is with both pieces. So we have that could be our first option, and then you could solve each of those separately. And you would have all your steps. So when it says describe, that just means whenever you do your work, just write it, what you're doing out to the side. Your other option would be to do the shortcut. And the shortcut, you would start out by adding 5 to all sides. So you would have negative 15 is less than or equal to 5x is less than 40. Then, to get the x by itself, we would divide by 5 on all sides. So negative 3 is less than or equal to x is less than 8. Just like before, how we wrote it compoundly without the word and, we can also undo that as well if we need to. So we could say that negative 3 is less than or equal to x, and x is less than 8. Now, I don't like the fact that my variable is on the right-hand side over here, so I would rewrite that. It's pointing towards the negative 3, and x is less than 8. So either answer is acceptable. We're going to solve and graph these compound inequalities. Hopefully you recognize that this is an and. And I'm going to use the shortcut method. So we have negative 7 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to negative 3. When I graph, I like to graph with the word and in there, so I'm going to rewrite those. So my first one would be negative 7 is less than or equal to x, and x is less than or equal to negative 3. So whenever we come over here and graph, well, I need to do one more thing. I'm going to rewrite this. It's pointing towards this negative 7. So I'm going to graph from that. So I've got negative 3 and negative 7. With negatives, be especially careful that you write them in numerical order on your number line. Ands normally go in towards each other. But remember, you can always have a special case for those. So we have x is greater than or equal to 7. So I'm going to put my closed circle and go out just a little bit. Then I have x is less than or equal to 3. So this is a normal and that meets in the middle. For 20, I have to, actually, you have a couple of options. I'm just going to distribute. Please know that you can go ahead and divide everything by 2 to solve this one. But if you want help with that, see your teacher. Okay, so then I'm going to do the same process as before. Subtract 2 from all sides. Then we have to divide. Now this time we are dividing by a negative. So even in a compound inequality, when you divide by a negative, you have to flip your signs. So if I reduce negative 2/6, that's negative 1/3. I have to flip my inequality. And I have to flip this inequality, and then that's going to be negative 4/3. Especially be careful in this case with those negatives. So whenever I graph those, I'm going to come over here and put negative 1/3, because it's closer to 0, negative 4/3. Then I'm also going to rewrite it. Remember, if you want to, you can always read from the middle. You can say x is greater than negative 4/3 and x is less than 1/3. So you have two options, but I'm going to rewrite it just for practice. So negative 1/3 is greater than x, and x is greater than negative 4/3. When I rewrite, it's pointing towards the x. Now we can graph, so x is less than 1/3, and then x is greater than negative 4/3. 21, we just have a phrase, all real numbers are greater than 3 or less than or equal to 0. So all real numbers are greater than 3, so that's going to be x is greater than 3 or less than or equal to 0. Now on this one, remember, we have to come over here and grab our variable. So we have x is greater than 3 or x is less than 0. So we've got 0 and 3. We've got greater than 3 and then less than or equal to 0. Remember, ors typically go out unless it is a special case. For 22, we have to solve. And I didn't leave enough room, so I'm going to do the best I can. So I've got to minus 5 from both sides. So x is less than 5, or if we divide by negative 35, we have to flip our inequality, and then 35 will go into 175 5 times. X is less than negative 5. Then we need to graph. So I've got a 5 and a negative 5. So negative 5 on the left, positive 5 on the right. So it is less than 5 or it is less than negative 5. So this is one of our special cases. So if we have an or special case, remember that we keep the longer piece of our answer. So our answer would actually be an open circle at 5 and then goes to the left, because either of those have to satisfy the answer in an or. Please make sure you review your notes for your other special cases. 23, we need to determine which of those are the following are solutions to that inequality. I like to work it out and then look at the graph. So I'm going to solve each of these, and I'm going to pause the video while I solve, and then I will pick back up. Okay, so now I have finished solving. I do want to rewrite with the variable on the left in this case. So that would be x negative 3. It's pointing towards the x. Or x is greater than 1. I personally think that it is easier to identify your answers from a graph. So I'm going to draw a graph. I'm going to put negative 3 and 1. And it is less than or equal to negative 3. So that's closed circle at negative 3, and then greater than 1. Now I'm going to plot these points so that I can see. So at negative 3, we see that it is a closed circle, so negative 3 would be a solution. Negative 2 is right there, which is not in my solution. 0 is somewhere right there, so it is part of my solution. And then, or excuse me, it is not. 0. Sorry about that. Then I have 2, which is over here, which is in my graphing. So the answer would be 1 and 4. Now we need to graph. If it's in the, we still use y equals mx plus b form, even if we are talking about inequalities. We just have 2 more steps to graphing. So you still, it's in the correct form, so you still start at negative 4 on the y-axis. Your slope is up to right 3, up to right 3, down to left 3. Then we have to ask ourselves, is it open or is it dashed or a solid line? And because it doesn't have the or equal to, it is dashed. And we have to decide which way to shade it. It is less than, so we would shade below. So remember that if you have a dashed boundary line, it is not included in your answer. Okay, so if we were asked where are the solutions located in what quadrants, so this is quadrant 1, this is quadrant 2, that's quadrant 3, and this is 4. And be careful because it looks like it's not in there, but it actually is. So the only Quadrant that you don't have any of your solution would be quadrant 2, so your solutions would be in 1, 3, and 4, if that was a question. We need to graph x is greater than or equal to 6. So go on the x-axis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hopefully you remember VUX, so you know it's a vertical. It is a solid boundary line because of that or equal to. Then we have to shade greater than. So any numbers greater than 6. So your graph would look like that. Now we have our different notations that we did. So when we have x is less than 3, so I mark 3, it's an open circle to the left. Interval notation, I like to use my graph to help me with interval notation. So over here is negative infinity, so for my interval notation, it's going to be from negative infinity to 3. So infinity is, whether it's positive or negative, always has parentheses. Since we have an open circle at 3, it's also going to be parentheses. Then for your set notation, you would put curly brackets, and then you would say x. Then your line that means such that x is less than 3. Then for the next one, x is greater than or equal to 3. So that I'm going to add my 3. It's going to be a closed circle to the right. I'm going to use my number line to help me. So I know going to the right is positive infinity, so I know it's going to be from 3 to positive infinity. My infinity always has parentheses, but because this is a closed circle, 3 is going to have a bracket around it. For my set notation, it's going to be curly bracket. X is x such that x is greater than or equal to 3. Close your curly brackets. Okay, now we have our, and hopefully recognize that this would be an and compound inequality, but we're going to graph. So I'm going to put -2 and 3, and it is, I'm just going to read from my variable. X is greater than or equal to 2, so that is a closed circle at -2. And greater than, I'm going to start that way, and then x is less than 3, so that would be an open circle. Less than would be that way, so it is a typical and that meets in the middle. Now for our interval notation, we need to realize at -2 it's going to be a bracket, and at 3 it is going to be a parentheses. So I'm going from -2 to 3. And a bracket around -2 and a parentheses around 3. Then for set notation, it is curly bracket and then x such that, now just like before, we grab our first notation. So -2 is less than or equal to x is less than 3. And then for the or compound inequality, I'm going to graph it first. So -2 and +5. So it is less than or equal to 2 and greater than 5. Now, I know in this case, and this is a little bit different. So I know from on this side, it's going from negative infinity to a -2. So that's the first thing that I'm going to write in our interval notation. So from negative infinity to -2. Now I'm going to finish this off. I know negative infinity is just going to have a parentheses. -2 is going to have a bracket. And this is called a union. This is just because it has two pieces on our graph. So we're going to put a U. And then we're going to do our other one. So at 5 to infinity, I know it's always a parentheses at infinity, and because it's open, it is a parentheses at 5. And that's our interval notation. Now for our set notation, same as before, x such that, then we just grab x is less than or equal to -2, or x is greater than 5, close curly bracket. Now for 27, we have that if A is greater than B and A equals C, which statement must be true? Well, the easiest thing to do, in my opinion, is to, instead of an A over here, I'm going to put C is greater than B, because if A and C are equal, then that is true. So I'm looking for something that says C is bigger than B, or vice versa, B is smaller than C. So B is less than the value of C would be answer C. For 28, if X is less than 0 and Y is greater than 0, which statement must be true for the expression of XY? So just if you multiply them together. So here the easiest thing to do would be to plug in numbers. So if X is less than 0, that just means that X is going to be a negative number. So I'm going to go with the most simple negative number. So let X equal -1. If Y is greater than 0, I'm going to go with the most simple positive number and say Y is 1. So in this case, if you multiply a negative number with a positive number, you know the answer is going to be negative. So the answer would be C. 29, an amusement park charges $15 to enter, and then an additional fee for each time a guest rides a roller coaster. Susan rode 6 times, and her total payment was $33. Maria rode 11 times. What was her total payment? So first we need to calculate how much it was each time they rode a roller coaster using Susan's visit. So we know that it costs $15 to get in, and we know that Susan rode the roller coaster 6 times. So I'm going to say 6 times X, and her total payment was $33. So if we subtract 15, we get that 6X equals 18, and if we divide by 6, X equals 3. So that means that each time you ride a roller coaster, it is $6. So now it says Maria rode 11 times, so 11 times $3, but we also know she paid $15 to get in. So that's going to be 33 plus 15, which is $48. Last question. We just need to simplify. We have to distribute first. So we have 30 plus 12x minus 40 minus 16x. Then we need to combine like terms. So we have our x terms, so that's going to be -4x. Then we need to combine our constant, so that's going to be -10.